Hi, everyone. I'm Denise Garth, Chief Strategy Officer at Majesco, and you're listening to the Future of Insurance Industry Leaders podcast series. Follow along as I interview the best and brightest leaders in the insurance industry and insurtech landscape to bring you the latest in digital transformation, innovation, industry trends, challenges, and opportunities, as well as next-gen technologies. We use our experience to anticipate what's next without losing sight of what's now. Stay tuned to find out your next now. Welcome, everybody, to today's podcast for the Future of Insurance podcast series. I am absolutely thrilled today to have Sandeep Mangaraj and Manish Shah joining me on this podcast. Kind of keep this conversation going around all of these technologies that Microsoft, you're really leading the charge on, that we're leveraging in our products. A key area of focus that we have together for our joint customers, though, is around trust, safety, and compliance. Something, obviously, that's really important for insurers who are focused on risk management. Talk about how this combined infrastructure of Microsoft and Majesco solutions elevates this area of focus for insurers and delivers a more robust approach that they can really have an ease from a risk management perspective. Sandeep, why don't you start?
Trust and safety is foundation to everything we do, period. Right? We would not be able to be where we are, right, without making sure that that's of paramount focus. And as we move into this age of AI, responsible AI is going to be one of those linchpins. So, we have been extremely upfront about making sure that we have clear guiding principles that drive everything that we do around AI. And just please humor me, I'll go a little through these 6 principles because I think they're very important. It starts with fairness. It's absolutely important that the AI systems should treat everyone fairly and equitably, right? So if you are similarly situated, you should be getting similar treatments, right? So fairness is a founding bedrock principle. The second is around reliability and safety. Right? Again, you cannot build trust if it's not reliable, safe, and consistent under normal circumstances and also under unexpected circumstances. We cannot just focus on normal. We have to also focus on the edge cases. The third pillar, and this is actually, I see this as an increasingly important one, is around making sure we are protecting private information. We are protecting private information and we are resisting attacks. Right? Security is really, really important now, right? Bad actors are always 3 steps ahead in terms of thinking about new ways of attacking the threat surface, right? So securing this very, very important personal and business information is going to become important, right? Especially as we're moving towards more complex and critical systems. We cannot be who we are and what we do without making sure that we are also including inclusive design principles in what we are doing, right? There are 1 billion people in this world with disabilities, and we need to make sure that we are being inclusive, right? And I think AI can be a real positive source of change here, a driver here. And so that's something that is really important. So we want to make sure that the systems we are developing understand and address potential barriers in a product environment that could unintentionally exclude people. So that's principle number 4. Principle number 5 is around transparency. Again, tied to trust. You need to make sure that, especially as if decisions are going to have tremendous impacts on people's life, transparency is absolutely key. And then probably the most important, and so it's not last but not the least, is accountability. We believe that people who design and deploy AI systems must be accountable for how their systems operate, period. So these 6 principles are guiding what Microsoft is doing in this space, right? So straight off the bat, Majesco and Majesco partners with Microsoft, right? You know that what we are bringing in, the platforms that we are, making available to you are adhere to these principles. Right. So that's number 1. And second, I'll touch on it very briefly. Data is obviously the oil for AI, right? You cannot do anything without data. And it's also very important for trust and security. So on data, we want to make sure, and it's very clear, your data is your data. It's not Microsoft's data. You own it, you control it, you decide how you want to monetize it. That's another bedrock principle.
So Manish, I think we've incorporated some of those same principles in our products and leveraged them.
Yeah, obviously data privacy is always super duper important, along with the other security and the other principles that you mentioned, Sandeep, in terms of transparency, inclusivity, and all those things. Number one question Denise always comes is that, wait a second, I don't want to do this thing because now my data will be in a public domain. Because here's the problem, and here's a misnomer. The misnomer that people have, and it's in early days, I think there is still a lot of education that needs to, go through. But the misnomer is that, okay, this is like ChatGPT. Since you put a prompt in a ChatGPT, your data will be used, and you will feel that, okay, if I'm using that kind of a service, that means all my data, private, not private, but whatever it is my data, and it's now going to be somewhere, and it's going to appear in some shape or form in some other areas, and I can't do that. And that's really what I want to clarify, and I want to bust that myth that we would never do something, or we will never use a technology which basically exposes our customers' data into a public domain, or even with a third-party vendor for that matter. The whole reason for choosing the Microsoft stack is that while they may be using a technology that has been built by OpenAI, they are the custodian and guardian of privacy to ensure that data is not flowing through anybody's large language models, or is not being dissipated to any other purposes. So when a request is being made, or when a data is being used in order to get an answer through a generative AI, that is, very much walled within that customer parameters, and it's not being used. And I just want to make sure that while we are using generative AI, while we are using a large language GPT models, that doesn't mean that we are passing data to OpenAI for them to actually, use however they want, like the Chat GPT. We are actually using that a Microsoft services for that, which ensures the privacy, security, and other bedrock principle that Sandeep mentioned. So that's the utmost principle for us to make sure that data remains safe and private.
One of the things that you guys have kind of talked on is how GenAI really helps from a risk standpoint. Talk a little bit more about the risk operationally, whether it's in risk assessment, fraud detection, maybe customer engagement, really helping to minimize that risk. But even more importantly, I think, Manish, you talked about this, about the productivity of employees. Our industry is going to have between 40 and 50% of the people retiring and replaced by new employees over the next 3 to 5 years. Talk about how GenAI is really going to be able to really help reduce the risk on business operations by really helping to drive that productivity.
As I mentioned earlier, that clearly you want to use your experience resources, which I call it scarce resources, effectively. You don't want them to be wasting time on things that can be done by junior resources. In this case, a GenAI can do this. Obviously, GenAI, if you call it a fifth grader today, it's not going to stay fifth grader. It's going to get more and more smart as the time comes along, and it's going to learn more and more tricks, and it's going to develop more and more insights that will be able to do a more skillful stuff than what it's able to do today. So that journey is just going to continue. However, keep one thing, I just want to make sure that, we don't lose the focus on the mission, Denise. And that mission for us really is to bring the value to the customers by leveraging technology. And GenAI, from my perspective, is one flavor of it. It's not end all be all, as always happens into the tech hype. But I think that important part is that there is an AI component also. It's not GenAI, it's AGI. It's an artificial general intelligence. And as part of an artificial general intelligence, I think the need to identify the patterns on the data, which is in a more predictive manner rather than, looking back into the past, whether you are analyzing the risk, whether you are analyzing the weather patterns, whether you are analyzing the frauds. There are various different patterns in which you have a vast data which is very proprietary to our customers. So it's not necessarily a large language models that has been built over a lot of literatures and books and other learnings, but this is very insurance specific data. There is very customer specific data, and those models are still going to be very, very important for aiding, in addition to the GenAI, aiding adjusters and underwriters and CSRs and everyone else to make intelligent decisions quickly. So we continue in Majesco, right? So you understand that we have a bunch of our own proprietary models, what we call it property intelligence, which will actually, you put an address, any address in the United States, and it will tell you a risk scoring from various dimensions, where you can understand what's a risk scoring looks like from an outdoor perspective versus indoor perspective. How's the code violations? How's the permit scoring? What is the CAT scoring, depending on the area where it is located and the catastrophes that has been observed. So we use a lot of data. We buy a lot of data actually from the partners, and then we build models, and then we integrate those models within our systems where underwriters don't have to sort of, scan through various different systems, they are, taking an action, they can actually, see that information about property. Now, we build a bunch of models, like we build subrogation models to quickly identify the subrogation that, hits to the bottom line right away. That I'm sure there are adjusters are smart, but when there's a flood of claims come, I think there's so much you can process. And at that point, having AI, which is never gets tired, tells you that, okay, you know what, here is 80%, 90% subrogation chance. I think it helps you prioritize which one to actually focus on the subrogation and avoid the leakage that will actually, help the bottom line. So we continue to build, we have a whole data science team. We continue to build the proprietary models in those niche area and then top it up with the Gen AI to actually prove and then embed that within our products to actually deliver. That's really our vision and strategy. I mean, that's nothing I would say out of the box that anyone cannot think about it, but we are never about, coming up with an idea that is like no one has thought about it. We are all about executing it well. And that's what we are doing.
Sandeep, your perspective?
I think employee experience and well-being is critical. Especially, think about all the changes we have had to go through over the last few years. We have been, Microsoft does this work trend index, and we have been looking at how behavior has changed as the way in which we are working is changing and evolving. Looking at, in the May time period, May of 23, when we took a survey, we found 64% of the people were saying that they're struggling with having enough time and energy to do their job, right? And if you just dig further into what is it that is causing this angst, right? It comes down to, 3 buckets: broken meetings, and one we call broken meetings. I don't think I need to go more into it. We all know it. And we have all lived through it. Then the information labyrinth, something that, Manish was talking about. It's really difficult to get to the information that you need, right? You got to navigate through hundreds of paths, right, to get to what you need to. And so that adds to significant time and energy that's wasted. And in the last is the blank page, right? The blank page that we have. I want to start something and I have a block, right? A writer's block. If you look at all 3 areas, AI and Gen AI is going to change and is changing already. So I'm an optimist. And I seriously, believe that this is not only going to be transformative in terms of driving better productivity, making a society better. It's also going to make sure that all of us, right, it leads to our well-being, right, and our effectiveness.
There's still a conversation going on out in the industry, even while people are replacing their old legacy on-prem solutions and moving to the cloud with those solutions. There's still, I think, some questions about business value and cost effectiveness. I think people are trying to compare, the cost of things, but I think they got to kind of expand the horizons that to do some of the things that they're able to do now in the cloud, they would not have been able to do in the on-prem. So Sandeep, given that you work across a number of different financial services segments, to give your summary of what's the value and cost effectiveness of moving to the cloud that you're seeing?
One thing we touched on a lot was around innovation, right? We have spent a lot of time talking about Gen AI. Let's cut to the chase. These models would not have been possible to develop and deploy at scale and adopted the way it has without the cloud, right? So cloud is definitely an engine for innovation and growth. If you, talk about value and effectiveness, it actually goes down to, conversation we had earlier in terms of having clarity around what's the trigger, what are the value that you are trying to drive towards and what are the enablers. And if you look at that, we have seen it. Like if there was, if the original aim was to do a data center migration and you lifted and shifted your application from on-prem to the cloud, the benefit that you get is along certain dimensions. It may not be able to help you to drive your innovation agenda, and that could lead to frustration. Again, another thing that we see is that even if you did everything right, another challenge is that the cloud is constantly evolving. So what may have worked 2 and 3 years back, there are other services that are available today, right, that you should be thinking about and taking advantage of. So there is a reason and there is a rationale and a reason why you should be revisiting what you're doing, right? Are you using serverless functions, right? How are you architected? So this is not a once and done thing. It's something that's evolving that we all have to evolve with. What I will say is that the focus on FinOps, I think, is really important. I think it's a good practice because if we don't measure, we cannot improve. I'm very proud. And we work with our customers when they are, focused on cloud and cloud economics, because we want to make sure that they are getting the value, because ultimately their success is our success. If they're not getting value, we need to do things differently, right? So I think this focus is good. I think there's a lot of lessons we have learned over the last 5 years. I do believe that there is value. It's just making sure that we do it right.
Anything to add, Manish?
I think he covered it. At the end of the day, I think, let's just make sure that we're using technology to a purpose. There are so many examples at the same time that we know that the cloud can help. There are so many examples that people have actually gone that route and haven't seen much to change what their status quo was. And I cannot emphasize more that when you want to digitize something, when you want to get digital, when you want to get to cloud, when you want to Gen AI, it does come with a shift in your organizational culture, in your other processes. It's not just a technology play. This is a shift in operating model of your company in terms of how you do it, and sponsorship is super important all the way from an executive level in order to get those changes adopted, because technology will get you there. But I think the vital components are a shift in an operating model, executive sponsorship, and overall organization adoption.
So before I wrap this up, another question before I give you your final question. A theme that's gone through this whole conversation is continuous innovation, and it's a cornerstone of both of our strategies, both Majesco and Microsoft. What can we see in the partnership in 2024 and beyond around continuous innovation, guys? Manish, why don't I start with you?
Well, you can certainly expect a more and more immersion of AI and Gen AI with leveraging a lot of Microsoft capabilities that is also continue to evolve. I think beyond AI, we also have been using Microsoft data technology, which is, I think, one of the most broadest vision that I have seen across anywhere in the technology landscape that Microsoft has built over time. And we're looking to leverage the Microsoft fabrics in terms of getting an access to the data, having the data more accessible to our customers in a more real-time world. Listen, AI is great. And, it's not everything. I think still you need to have an access to your data. Still, you need to have a regular reporting and insights that you want to get through it. Still, you want to do the proper connections and move the data around your ecosystems. And I think that our intelligent core, which has a Copilot as one component of it, but really it also is focused on how do you build business intelligence through the traditional reporting and analytics. How do you have a data lake houses leveraging a scalable cloud native Microsoft Fabrics based technology. So we continue to expand in that route, and we'll continue to work on this thing. Having said that, we will continue to look for any new technologies that's coming, AI, data, or even outside on the Azure services. I can tell you this thing, we are using probably twice as many Azure services now in our product than we were using 2 years ago. So this thing is just never going to stop. But bottom line is, at the end of the day, we're going to do all those things if we have a conviction that this will bring a value to our customer.
Sandeep, where are you going to push us further?
I will tell you what, feedback is kindness. The thing that I love most about our partnership is that we have, there's no dancing around. Like, it's direct, it's tied to a purpose, it's clear. And I see us rising to the challenge because, as I said, right, when we're working on frontier technologies, there is no better feedback than what our customers and our customers' customers are providing us. So I see that our relationship will continue to strengthen. It will continue to be successful, both of us together, and this virtuous feedback loop will continue.
Yeah, and just to that point, Denise, I want to really thank Sandeep for helping us out, because we're kind of dreamers here. Like, we don't work bottom up saying, let's see what's there so that what we can achieve. We basically say, hey, why can't we do that? And let's see what we need to do that. And oftentimes we have, I would call it, from my perspective, there is no such thing as unreasonable demand, but people, the general world might see it that way. But Sandeep has helped support those things through Microsoft, and they always help us rise to that occasion. So appreciate the partnership.
So Sandeep, Manish knows this question, and I'm going to ask it of you. He provided his perspective in the podcast we did earlier this year. If you could use one word or phrase to describe the future of insurance, what would it be and why?
So Denise, I'd done my homework. I'd listened to a few podcasts, and I know you asked this. So guess what I did? I thought, in the spirit of what we are doing today, I ran it through ChatGPT, and its response was bright. But jokes and parlor games aside, I do believe that our best days are ahead of us. My answer is slightly different. My answer is innovation at scale.
Oh, I love that.
We were still in the early stages of this fundamental shift that we are talking about, right? And it's going to democratize innovation. So, we've talked about this. You do not have to be a data scientist to be able to unlock the power of AI. Product teams can take advantage of tools such as Microsoft Copilot Studio to quickly, securely, and responsibly incorporate AI, something that Majesco is already doing. So yes, it is definitely a bright future.
Well, with that, I am going to thank both of you, Sandeep and Manish. I think this partnership has a bright future, and the possibilities are only ahead of us and limitless. I think between the thinking and the innovation that both organizations are really committed to on behalf of the industry and our customers. So thank you both for your great insights. I'm looking forward to further conversations that we're going to have together.
Thank you for having us.
That's it for this week's episode of Future of Insurance Industry Leaders podcast. Subscribe to our market-leading podcast series available wherever you get your podcast from. Thank you for listening, and be sure to tune in the next time.